Turnbuckle Sessions. We have Steve Ozer, the global brand marketing manager for action figures at Mattel. How are you doing today, Steve?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Tom.
Dude, it's an honor to have you here. Being a wrestling fan and a wrestling figure collector, as you can see behind me, following you on Instagram, Action Figure Attack, and Twitter. I see you have the passion for wrestling and action figures. I see your photography. It's awesome. So I want to deep dive into that. When did you first become a fan of wrestling? What are your earliest wrestling memories?
Well, I mean, I do remember seeing WWF superstars back in the day. And my dad had one of those huge satellite dishes, if you can remember. And we would pick up a lot of the broadcasts from house shows like around the country. So it was pretty phenomenal to see. And I think one of the earliest matches I can remember, and I'm obviously dating myself by saying this, but Killer Khan versus Hulk Hogan at one of these house shows. And I liked it a lot. It was exciting, but I didn't really fully fall in love with it until Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. Like that pushed me over the edge. Obviously, I'm a kid, right? It's a cartoon, everything in a perfect package. Watched a little more, loved it, and then went completely over the edge to the maximum degree during the Mega Powers storyline. Specifically that summer where they feuded with Money Inc. And culminating in the Mega Powers exploding. Like that's really what completely solidified my love of pro wrestling, WWF, and everything involved in it. And I've never looked back, and it's never wavered.
So did you have the LJNs as a kid?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't remember what my first was, but I remember getting some specific ones, that were memorable. Like, Roddy Piper was a Christmas gift. And I remember I was visiting friends in Texas and found King Kong Bundy at KB Toys there. And he was so heavy. And then, towards the tail end of things, when they were getting a little scarce at stores, having to buy some of the last remaining figures from, I forget what the ad was. It was like the pre-ringside back in the day. If you remember, Pro Wrestling Illustrated had the ads with all the LJN figures. I got, $1 Million Man and Jake the Snake and Honky Tonk Man and a couple other the final figures through those ads.
It's so funny. I remember that as a kid when that ad came out. I didn't know about the whole Black Card series, and my parents wouldn't let me order it. Now, I was 9 years old when the LJNs came out, so I was online in my local store. It wasn't like a Toys R Us. It was a local, like a Ringside, where they had everything before Toys R Us, and it was a little more money. But I was there the first day LJNs came out, and I got the Hogan, the Piper, the Snooker, and Andre. So actually, no, Piper wasn't in that set. Piper came out in Series 2. So I remember that, and I remember my parents never let me get the Black Cards. So I'm on my mission now to finish that collection of the Black Cards.
They were pricey. LJNs in general were pricey, and getting those final figures like through catalogs and mail-aways was very expensive. So I'm lucky I got those few Black Carded figures for Christmas that year.
Now, do you still have them? That's the question.
I do have my originals. Obviously, they're in played with condition. And then maybe 10 years ago or so, I found a lot of figures from someone selling in Canada, and they weren't in great shape, but it was the complete collection. So I bought it, complete collection. They're a little banged up. And, they're for me. I'm not going to resell them. And maybe one day I'll sharpen up my customizing skills and repaint them or something. But I do have a complete banged up LJN collection.
Okay, so you're like me, because I have all my LJNs from when I was a kid. I have all my toys from when I was a kid, which means to me, I was a born collector. To be that young and not want to get rid of them. I mean, as a kid, I also saved TV guides, and I would keep them in a box untouched if it was something I loved on it. So here I am. I'm now 46, but I've been a collector since I was 6, and it's paid off. When did you realize you were a collector?
I mean, when I was, really young, collecting Superpowers and Masters of the Universe and WWF LJNs and the whole 9 yards, like my mom would always call it my collection. And back then everyone was allowed to say collect them all, right? That was on packaging. It was said in commercials. So, I mean, I completely absorbed that, and I was all in on a lot of brands back then, and I still love the same brands now. And I just wanted to get as many characters as possible. So, I knew back then, as much as one could know what being a collector was, right? I knew I had to collect them all, and I wanted them all. And it stuck, and I'm a poorer man in my current adult life because of it.
Trust me, I'm with you. My basement is, when we bought this house, I saw the basement and I'm telling my wife that's the house because I could just see how my collection would be set up. And that was one of the priorities when I was looking for a house. I needed a room to have my collection where the room it deserved.
Of
So
course.
so what is your most prized collection, whether it's a wrestling figure that you've had throughout the years?
I have a Posse Pass Riddler. So that was South American release of the Riddler in the Superpowers line. Super Estrella, Super Amigos. I'm sorry, I forget the name of the line exactly, but it was, a variation of Superpowers, obviously. And it was just a repainted Green Lantern, basically, in Riddler colors. And at one point in my eBay adventures, I found a graded, carded Posse Pass Riddler. And I always wanted to have it, so I finally scooped that up. I do have some, of the Jakks Classic Superstars Toy Fair figures, like the controversial Roddy Piper. I think Sunny was one of them that I have, and a few others that are in storage and slipping my mind, but those are very special. My Hasbros, my WWF Hasbros, mean a lot to me. The LJNs, like I mentioned before. And then, now behind me, it's like, this is stuff that I worked on. So it's like very meaningful to me. Like, some of these I'll open, right? I mean, they're all super special. Like these Elites behind me, I'll open those up. But like Ultimate Edition, like that's my baby. Legends is my baby. And I'll keep, at least one set of those sealed and displayed nicely. And I'll have an open set too, most likely.
Well, part of the reason why I'm broke is because I have to get two of everything because I love them loose, but I love them, as you can see behind me, mint on card. So I have shelves displaying errors, and then I have, the mint on card collection. Man, so talk a little bit about the Ultimate Edition. This was your baby, is it? That's what I understand.
Yeah. So what was happening at the time? I think it was entrance grades, right?
Yep.
Prices have been going up, for a long time here, and we're trying to keep those price points the same for the longest time. So, you've seen like, some things happen with basics and streamlining articulation and whatnot to account to keep that price point the same. With that musical base, the chip, the licensing of music associated with it, it was driving the cost of those entrance crates up to around $30. So, from a consumer standpoint, you weren't looking at that and getting a visual of $30 of value, right? You were just like, this is a figure like Kurt Angle with medals. It doesn't seem like a lot, So we were hitting that wall of like perceived value, like wasn't there anymore, even though we knew like what is going into it is expensive. Like on your guys' end as a collector and a consumer, it wasn't working out. So we wanted to pivot and wanted to create something, new and different and modern for modern collectors. So we brainstormed a lot and, came up with various ideas and early drafts of what became Ultimate Edition. And we looked at, what was happening with action figure photography at the time. And I was an action figure photographer. I still am, even though I'm not practicing much. But, it's like that's what people are doing now. They're opening their toys and posing them and shooting them and recreating moments. So we wanted to make sure that, that was represented in the WWE line. We wanted to make sure that, that part of collectordom was represented with product in WWE. And we saw a lot of what, some of these high-end, Japanese import style figures were doing. So it was patterned a little bit after that as well. And I think, at the end of the day, we came up with something that was, it delivered what, a nice chunk of modern collectors are looking for. Those swappable hands, swappable heads, so you can recreate every pose and, signature moment of a WWE event. We wanted to make sure the entrance gear was fully posable. So no more, static, stuck in a pose, harder plastic entrance gear. Just really like complete freedom in your posing and display of these figures.
Now, the line has exploded. It's an amazing line. I have them all. You've added the butterfly joints, which is an amazing addition to these figures. Did you expect them, like, they skyrocket in value as soon as they're off the market? Did you expect that?
I don't think I expected the surge that we're having. I mean, overall, we're seeing tons of lines, individual figures like go up in value very rapidly. I didn't really expect that at first. Once it started to catch on, I started to see why. But as far as Ultimate Edition goes, I just was hoping at the time to comp the business that we were doing on, defining moments previously and then entrance greats. And that would have been great from a business standpoint. If we were doing that kind of business, we're great. But now I think, the fact that even more people are on social, there's so many podcasts about wrestling figures. People want to pose the figures. Opening figures no longer completely devalues them on top of that. So that helps a lot as well. I think a lot of these factors like really help like this line take off and explode the way that it did. So yeah, it's in a great place right now. I'm very happy.
So I jumped ahead a little bit. I want to go back a little. So you get the job with Mattel as the global brand marketing manager for action figures. What did it mean to you as a collector to get put into this position of something that you loved?
I mean, I moved to California in the hopes of a dream would have been Mattel and WWE, right? But I was just hoping for toy industry or entertainment industry or something to where there was some creativity involved in it, to where I think I'm pretty good at creating a product, whether it's entertainment or commercial or whatever, that like emotionally resonate with people. Like, I do feel like that's maybe a specialty of mine. Like when we're doing stuff, like how does this going to make somebody feel when they see it for the first time? That's what I try to take into account. And I wanted to have a job where I could, execute on that and take advantage of that, like, sixth sense maybe, or whatever you want to call it. So that was the goal. So I came out here to California. I was working for Coca-Cola doing marketing at the time, taking care of the Florida market, and then was able to transfer out here and take care of a brand down in San Diego. Networked and everything, and eventually got into Mattel. A miracle. Shout out to Dave Jackson, who helped me get my foot in the door. Now he's on the AEW line at Jazzware, so we're nice wrestling figure family across companies and brands. But I mean, it was incredibly meaningful. Like, I sacrificed a lot I left, like I said, I had a huge house in Florida with a huge action figure display. And I kind of had to sacrifice that and just like start over and go to California and just try to make something different happen. So not only the relief of, okay, the sacrifice was worth it, but lifelong dream coming true, being able to represent, our collector community from the inside. Like, I'm right there with you. I'm on social media. I never left. I talk to everybody on a daily basis. And it's like all that information is being funneled through me. And hopefully at some point it's coming out in the product, so dream come true. I'm so blessed and lucky. I did work incredibly hard to get here, of course, but I know the position I'm in. I'm very grateful to be in it, and grateful to represent you guys on the inside.
I mean, it's an amazing to have a guy such as you in there, and you have Bill McKenna, who's also a wrestling fan. The guy takes a vacation, and we see on his Instagram he's in Japan watching wrestling shows. Like, the passion from everybody is there, and it's amazing, and it's showing in the lines now. So you get in.
Well, my vacations before Mattel were going to WrestleMania and going to San Diego Comic-Con. That was my 2 vacations a year. And now I'm doing it. It's part of the job, when COVID is not a thing. Like, I'm doing that. I'm going to WrestleMania for work and interacting with you guys at Access, and I'm interacting with you guys at Comic-Con. And then I hit the problem, right? Of like, now what are real vacations like, without those things?
That's a good point. But listen, they say if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. I have a feeling you're experiencing that. And you make yourself so available. You're answering questions on the Ringside Collectibles message board. You're on Twitter. You're on Instagram. Did you say, okay, now as a fan and collector, are you taking an approach as what you would love to see as a fan and a collector? Because that's what it feels like.
Well, of course, of course. I think it's super important for any type of fan or collector or consumer to know that they're heard, right? And I do want to say, like, I patterned myself after, people that I learned from on the outside who were open. And in a way, I want to give that back as well. There were open people. Jeremy Padower, of course, right? Everyone knows Jeremy, loves Jeremy. He was very open. With communication and how the business worked. Bill McKenna made sure that he was accessible when, WWE moved over from Jakks to Mattel. Ken Lilly at Palisades, if you remember that toy company that did, the Muppets and Ren and Stimpy and C-Lab and all those great toy lines back in the early 2000s. He was super accessible. And a whole host of others like that, who were just giving a lot of insights on how things work, being open to talk to people, getting opinions, the whole 9 yards. And, now, like, it helped get me to where I am, to when I got my foot in the door and started working, I understood things, right? And I didn't appear to be like, it's a business. I can't be a fanboy at work, right? So I knew the inner workings. I knew how it was. I couldn't just be like, why don't we just make, this that people have been asking for? I knew how to take the steps to actually make it happen rather than just like burst out and be too fanboyish. So, it's in a way making sure that the current consumers are heard, and I'm listening to them, and I'm doing what I can to incorporate their asks. I mean, there's a lot of asks, of course, but baby steps, right? Like everything you see, it's like a little at a time coming out. Ring carts, right? The ring carts are up here. Like, who knew that would happen? It's like one thing at a time, and we're getting there. But the other step, aside from being heard, is like, hopefully, who's the next me, right? Or who's the next Jeremy or whatever. Hopefully there's 1, 2, 3 people listening to myself, to what Jeremy's currently doing on social, to anybody else who's out there. The Hasbro team, shout out to them. They're doing a great job right now with their live streams and everything. Like, hopefully people are watching us, and we're getting the next set of like super fans truly prepared and say, okay, I can do this, right? I'm going to go to school and get my business degree, or I'm going to go to school and get my design degree, and I'm going to do this because I'm looking at these guys and they're inspiring me, and I can do that. So I say this all the time in interviews. I want more people, like this, like us, who love this stuff, who love the brands, who want to give it to the next generation to come on board and just create magic.
I mean, I think we're seeing a difference in the line the last few years, especially since you've been involved. I feel like you guys really listen to the fans. The figures with the True FX, I don't care what anybody says. It's like having a miniature person in your hand when you look at their heads. It's like it looks just like the person. Like, it's amazing. So we've seen improvements to the figures like the True FX. Is there anything down the line? Is there any other improvements coming? New technologies that we could look forward to?
I think that's the beauty of just having such an established line, and that, you're always like taking these trips to China. Obviously, we're not right now with COVID, but you're taking these trips to China and working with our development partners over there and figuring out new ways to accomplish things. Double jointed pinless elbows are a thing now, right? I know double jointed elbows have been a request for a long time. And now not only are we delivering that, but they're pinless on top for an even better aesthetic and a better looking figure. So I think you're going to continue to see evolutions like that. What can we do that make the product actually better, keep it competitive with what else is out there in the marketplace? Do I know what the next evolution is? Not quite sure, but those teams involved are always working on something and trying to figure out ways to make things better. I feel like, the True Effects thing happened just as I was like joining Mattel, but you could see in the industry it was starting to pick up, and I pay attention obviously to what competitors are doing. I collect practically everything, so I saw that trend starting in with the Japanese import figures first, like Mayfex and Figuarts and whatnot. We're doing that DIJ printing, and that stuff is eventually going to come over here and filter into the mainstream $20-ish price point toys that you're seeing in the US.
Yeah, it's amazing how they've come. Like I said, I've been around since LJNs to see where they've come, and all the way since then, through to Hasbro's, through to Jax, and now to Mattel. It's just amazing. So last week, an amazing showing with the Comic Con at home. You guys knocked it out of the park. I loved how smooth the ordering of the Sergeant Slaughter went. It was nice to see exactly at 11 o'clock or whatever time it was. It went up just as planned. Kudos to you guys. I've tweeted it and said it to you online. I think it was great the way it rolled out as smooth, but big week, exciting news out of there. First, let's talk about, the crowdfunded ring. Man, that thing is a thing of beauty. And I'm expecting to see the sales start kicking up now they're a week out of the announcements, and people spent a lot of money last week. But man, you listen to the fans with that one. What went into designing that?
That was a tall undertaking for us. A few years ago, we showed an entrance stage at WrestleMania Access and at San Diego Comic-Con, and we also separately showed a neon entrance in our retro display. So of course, with that entrance stage specifically, we were trying to gauge some interest to see, if people wanted something like that. And then the neon entrance diorama. People were just coming up to us left and right saying, how can I get this? When is this coming? So I kind of knew, right, when we made that diorama that would be the reaction. Anyway, we explored, constantly ever since. We were waiting for the right time, the way to actually be able to accomplish these things. And it all finally came together with the Mattel Creations site. So that site itself and the larger strategy around that site had been developing for quite some time. And now we're at the point where, the action figure brands like, WWE, Masters of the Universe are rolling into it now. And you're going to see some product from these brands. Toys R Us is not a thing, right? Maybe something like this could have lived at Toys R Us in the past. Maybe it could have been separate. You get a lot of stores taking a lot of inventory, so you can absorb that tooling cost and get the most bang for your buck. It's very difficult now, without stores wanting to dedicate large shelf space to what ultimately will be a slightly slower moving item in something that's expensive like this, right? So you need a platform to where now the consumer is basically taking the role of the retailer, right? When we develop a retail item, like if we were to do a ring, we need retailers to back it basically and say, okay, we're in for X amount of units, let's do it. And we're like, okay, we have retailer interest, we can make this happen. Now the consumer directly is in that role to where we need to see like they have, they're generating X amount of demands, in this case, 5,000 units worth for this particular bundle. And then we can pull the trigger and start tooling it up and fully developing it.
Yeah, and it's exciting. Now, my question for you is, of course, there's if this does well, there's opportunity for more sets to come in the future. And that's what I love about the idea of Mattel Creations. It leaves the ideas for more obscure items to be available, sold directly from you. If when it hits to 5,000, I'm going with the when because I think it will. Is that considered successful? Will you revisit and do something else again in the future?
I'd say so, right? Because
Awesome.
I know that every single item we do won't be for the entire WWE collector base, right? Like there's fans of specific eras, there's fans of types of figures, women only, NXT only. We have a very diverse set of collectors for WWE specifically. And you could look at other brands. If you look at like Marvel, there might be someone who I just want, me personally at this point, even though I break my rules all the time, I want classic versions of the characters, right? From the comics, from when I grew up. And then here I am, I get suckered into every movie wave. But, I make my set of rules and I try to stick to them. I know the same thing applies to WWE collectors as well, right? And I see that feedback. I saw the feedback when the ring was, the DTC arena was announced. I get it, right? Not everything is for every, segment of the consumer. So I would say 5K is a success. We'll explore other things and we'll try to hit every era and every segment after that was something that is, of the utmost appeal level to those particular segments of fandom.
Yeah, so make sure you order. I've ordered 3. That's just a
Thank
collector
you.
of me. I love to have one loose. I love to have one in box, and then you just might need a third. I'm not going to be able to go buy it if I need a third. Um, okay. So, what was the first figure or the first line that you had a say in that you got to hold in your hand, and that must have been a surreal moment.
Oh, wow. Maybe the retro ring, which I was not around at the beginning of development for, but it was the first item where I had direct input on packaging. And I was the one who insisted that they do like the line work cross-sell art of the figures on the back. And then when I got that, I'm like, wow, like I hope people liked it, because my heart and my love of the original Hasbro line, like that's where that input came from. Like I think this is what people want to see on this. So that was step one, and then helping dictate what kind of maneuvers were being performed on the front to mimic the old packaging on the original ring, that type of stuff. So I did save one full case of those rings. 4, I think, come in a case, and I got the whole case, and I have that in the closet here because it's super meaningful to me. And then then figures started up. I was put in charge of lineups, of overseeing the lineups in some of those earlier waves, and I think as time went on, my imprint got heavier and heavier on them, and I think the first wave that was like really like we were rocking and rolling, and we fleshed out like a nice process with the lineups, was that wave. I forget the number, but there was a wave with Ali and Ciampa, that elite wave. Rey Mysterio was in that wave. That one, I think we were really rocking and rolling with this current team. And I think the consumers actually considered that a really good wave. And that's a reflection on us completely finally gelling as a team and like getting it right together.
I mean, it actually, I agree. It shows in what's been done over the last few years. All your announcements now are always, you can't miss them. They're hot. Like this announcement last week, everything was great. The announcement, at Access, well, what would have been Access weekend, was amazing for WrestleMania. So you guys are knocking it out of the park. So you mentioned retros, and the fans had spoken. They wanted more retros, and now, thanks to Mattel Creations, they have the chance to get more retros. The packaging on that box is worth it alone. I love the packaging. I can't wait to get that set of 4 to see them come back to life. I'm sure you had a big hand in doing that. Talk a little bit about that set.
So at the end of the retro run, I was meddling a lot. It became clear very early on that it wasn't going to make it. So I did push to complete that year, and I became very heavy-handed in attempting to coerce the marketing manager who was in charge to shift the lineups a little bit and get them to be a little more Legends focused. Because I mean, there was a chance, when we found out that retailers were not going to support that line anymore, that'd be it, that it wasn't going to come back, right? So I wanted to make sure we got Diesel out. So we got Diesel out in a head sculpt that reflected the lost Diesel figure from back in the day. And we got more Legends out, like, Iron Sheik and Junkyard Dog. So we really wanted to just try to make, the end of the run of that line as appealing as possible. Then when, it finally was getting close to ending, we were having serious conversations about how we bring it back, which is why when it finally became public that the line was not going forward, we never said it was canceled and done, because we had already started having discussions on, okay, it's on a break and we're going to figure out a way to make this happen. All these things that are happening now with Mattel Creations were in the early phases back then. So I already had my eyeballs on whatever this website was going to turn out to be for it to live there, right? Then it's just, consumer demand is going to dictate this line's success or failure. We don't have to worry about, a retailer maybe. Sometimes retailers just want some freshness. It may not even be a reflection of aligns performance, right? So, but we don't have to worry about that anymore. If you guys want it and support it, and hopefully we can put our best foot forward with lineups and with product, and you like what we're doing, then the line can live, and we're gonna do our best. And I'm listening to a lot of the requests, and some of those characters that are being requested are in future lineups already. So I'm thinking we're doing what we can. And plus, please keep in mind where we do have a little bit of handcuffs on as far as, talent available, and legal things, like with packaging. So we're going to push the limits and do the best we can and deliver, the best possible product and the best possible lineups we can. And if you support, I'm going to keep them going as long as I possibly can.
And it's just a proof that you listen. Fans speak. You guys listen because you got your shot at retros again. Make sure when they go up to order, I think you said early 2022, you go order them. I know I'll be ordering 2 sets myself. I want to talk a little bit about the Superstars line that was announced last week.
Yeah.
And I was so excited for that. I guess they're Remco based to fit with that line.
So I just mentioned how, a line could be doing well and a retailer just feels like it's time for some freshness. I mean, this is a perfect example. WWE Masters is still doing great. Like, you can't find it on pegs. It sells out instantaneously. But, it was time for some freshness in the toy cycle, basically. But, given how successful Masters of the WWE Universe was, we didn't really want to fully abandon it. And I actually kind of dragged it out a little longer. Or this might have happened sooner, but I fought to keep it around a little bit. And given its popularity, we wanted to kind of continue it with like a sister line, basically, or a natural progression. So why not do Superstars, straight up wrestlers? I know I would try to get 2 of each figure and then have one in the Motu gear and one stripped down as wrestlers, and I would swap parts. Like if someone had gauntlets, I would try to find no gauntlets and the correct wrist tape to make a wrestler version. So I think it's perfectly complementary to what came before and what people were already doing with the figures. And they're still super compatible with straight up He-Man fans, right? Like, you can barbarianize the Superstars figures. If you want like Ric Flair to live on Eternia, you can give him some parts and make him a proper Motu character. So I think you're still getting the best of everything, and now you're getting really sweet soft goods on top of it with these figures.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best of both worlds. Like you said, you could easily swap the figures out, and there you go. Talk a little bit about the Comic-Con exclusive Sergeant Slaughter with the amazingly fast sellout. The last 3 years, you've knocked it out of the park with these Comic-Con exclusives with the Macho Man, the Slim Jim Macho Man, and last year, Mr. T. This year, you get Sergeant Slaughter, the ultimate, the ultimate edition, but it just looks like it is the ultimate Sergeant Slaughter figure. I've seen the pictures online. Man, does this figure look amazing. I can't wait to get it. Talk a little bit about that.
So we had a tough hill to climb coming out of, back-to-back successful years with Slim Jim Macho Man, and that's when we cracked the code on what a WWE Comic-Con item, really needs to be successful, so that we can keep making them year after year. And then, Mr. T, we did a lot of work with WWE to get Mr. T signed and make that happen. And then we came up to this year, and it wasn't looking like we were going to get a new signing to happen. Those things can be difficult. Everyone has to be agreeable, and it just wasn't going to work out for new talent. So we're like, okay, who do we have that fits this mold of someone who has, mainstream pop culture presence and fandom, that we can do something really cool with the packaging, this perfect mix that is appealing to an audience larger than just WWE collectors, right? Because, you have to remember these Comic-Con items, while absolutely they're for the fans, and we're going to make sure the fans who are loyal to us like this item, that this is appealing to them. We do want to make sure that we have the larger pop culture dome's eyes on WWE Mattel action figures at that time. That's the purpose of the Comic-Con item, to get extra attention on the line, and that the health of that is great, because if more people see how cool this line are and how the figures are, then the line is healthy and grows, and then we could do more and more exciting things for you guys. I mean, case in point, going from Macho Man to Mr. T, right? Like, this Macho Man success and all the buzz that generated and success allowed us to get to the point where we can do a Mr. T, right? So, we just need to keep that momentum going with these great items that get a lot of attention from the pop culture world.
It's so awesome. You've knocked it out of the park on all three of them. I can't wait. So when do you okay, so this year's Comic-Con is over. Do you go right back to the board to say, okay, what do we do for next year?
We've got it planned.
Wow.
I do want to say, let's not veer off away from Sarge yet. I do want to say the sellout, in my view, was unfortunate. The amount of time, obviously, from a business standpoint, a quick sellout looks great, but I know it was a bad experience for a lot of the people who missed out. And when you look back the previous years, Randy, he was about maybe an hour-ish, maybe under an hour. I don't quite remember. Mr. T was a little over an hour for a sellout. Based on the quantities of Sarge, and based on the popularity of our previous items, the current state of our business, and the pop culture appeal of him, obviously he's appeared in other toy lines and whatnot. So we knew all that. So taking that into account, I never expected a under 5-minute sellout for Sarge. Nobody did. We're going to do our best to make sure that it's a much better experience the next go around. I hear the calls for, we want an Ultimate Sarge. They did a little poll on the, like, if we were to revisit this, how would you want it executed? So I've got my eyes on that. I can't do anything overnight, right? But I am being very open and explorative of what we can do for the fans who really want an Ultimate Edition Sergeant Slaughter. So I just wanted to say that. I want to thank everybody for the success, and we're just figuring out next steps now and trying to make sure next year it's a better experience for everybody. Knowing that Comic-Con items are still going to be a little tough to get. It's an exclusive for Comic-Con. We'll probably have a live show, all that stuff, but we want it to be better than it was this year.
And again, that's just awesome, because you're listening to the people and you're still taking, what they have to say. Again, it was so nice to go onto a website that just worked. Whether, it is unfortunate that the quantities went as fast as they did and not everybody got their hand on it. But to me, whether I got it or not, would I have been disappointed if I didn't get it? Yeah, of course. But the fact that the site works so seamlessly was just amazing. And a lot of times you see the sites go down, and as fans, we didn't have to deal with that. So.
And I think that bodes well for future sales, right? You have a site that works. And I know, there were questions about, putting something in a cart and, not being able to check out before it was removed from the cart. I'm talking to the team about that. I don't know if that's avoidable or not. I know that is common on a lot of websites, to where you can put something in your cart and it can be removed before checkout. I'm going to talk to the appropriate people about all this stuff. And if it can be fixed and improved, then I'm going to push for it. So the best I can do is just push for better for you guys.
That's awesome. Okay, so back to where I was going. You're watching a Monday Night Raw or a Friday Night SmackDown. I'm wondering the process. If you see a wrestler, not to name any names because it doesn't matter who, I've always been curious the process of what goes into building a figure and putting together a figure. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Oh, wow. So, I mean, if we're watching the show and we see something hot happening, it's very complex, right? Because we plan out things very far in advance. So, we do try to be timely with what's happening on TV, but that might require like shaking up everything, right? If something really major goes down, it's like, oh my God, this guy won the title. It was so unexpected. We didn't see this trajectory for the talent happening. Then we'll make that change happen, right? But it might have to reshuffle everything. What if they just had a figure out? Now what do we do, right? It's too close together. It's very complex from a lineup perspective. From putting it together, that's not that bad. The guys work very hard, of course, but we can have a sculpt ready fairly quickly. It's really like figuring out where to get it into the pipeline of development and production. That's the tricky part. Bill's great. He can art direct a sculpt and have a great sculpt ready to go and have deco ready to go. But it's like, where can we actually fit this into things, from a business perspective and from a factory capacity perspective, to get it out as quickly as possible. So, it's finding a home for it in a slot or lineup somewhere. It's Bill, getting a sculpt ready, having deco created for it. Rob doing his copy, packaging, doing their thing, licensor approvals, of course. I'm very much simplifying this process, but this is at least a year process for most figures. And in some cases, like if you're talking about a kids line where maybe timeliness to television isn't as important, like that can go out to 2 years in some cases.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Wow. Oh, man, it's an exciting time to be a wrestling fan. It's exciting time to be a wrestling figure collector. I think for us diehard wrestling fans, being a wrestling figure collector just goes hand in hand. So what are you looking forward to most out of everything that was announced last week? The one thing you can't wait to get your hands on?
Well, I have one of them that we showed. It wasn't at the panel, but I think we showed it on the ringside Q&A. It's the Survivor Series Hogan. Very exciting. Hulk rules Hogan to me. It's my favorite era of Hulkamania, I guess. That's cool. And we were able to upgrade it to double jointed elbows. This one doesn't. This is the photo sample that has single, but the final has double jointed. So that one's super exciting. The Kane Ultimate Edition. I'm very excited about that. Obviously, I've seen comments since the line started that we need that version of The Undertaker and that version of Kane. And they were planned from the start, right? We knew they had to come together, and we knew that they had a high amount of tooling. So we needed to, you have a tooling budget for the year. So you can't just like do whatever you want, whenever you want. So we had to be very strategic with this. So they're the first wave of next year, which will hit like ringside later this year. So you get that before the holidays, and then hit traditional retail at the beginning of next year. So we waited for a moment where, okay, beginning of the year, we'll spend a big chunk of money tooling these guys up properly, new boots, new torsos, the whole 9 yards, new heads for Kane. That was asked for a long time. But that's happening. So that's super exciting. That's something that was like so long requested and long awaited. And, the Kane's my favorite, but the Undertaker also, long requested. I'm glad they're finally happening. The Legends, Jake the Snake with the Cobra glove, super cool. The Chase is a WCW Jake, which I think is really rad because he was there for, quick cup of coffee. So very cool to get a Jake figure in his WCW gear. So many. The Damian Priest turned out phenomenal. It looks really, really good. The new Bobby Lashley is great. Drew with the sword and kilt, super cool. Camo Cole, finally. That's another one we knew was happening right from the time it lost the poll in Fan Takeover. We knew it was the next Cole that was coming. But that's one where you have to get what we promised out first, which is the winner, which was the other look. But we knew we had this one in the pipeline. So I'm glad that one's coming for everybody as well. And that's my preferred look out of those two new Cole figures.
Yeah, it's exciting. So now we get to complete the set of the Undisputed Era with that look. So that's amazing. And just listen, like I said, I'm blown away. You just keep listening to the fans, and it's awesome as a collector to hear that and to see this happening. I'm a huge collector. I collect everything, but the Legends line is probably one of my favorites. I'm glad to see that's back and sticking around, and I can't wait to get the cream of the crop Macho Man. So you are responsible for bringing that back as well?
Yeah, so we kind of stepped away for a minute from like exclusive lines at Target and Walmart, and that was just kind of like a resetting of the brand, so to speak, right? Exclusives were kind of overshadowing the main line, maybe to its detriment. So we reset a little bit. Main line became very healthy again, and then we started pushing out exclusive lines again. And we did some different variations, and I think we were sitting on Network Spotlight for a minute as just like a fill-in, like they needed something, and we created or brought back Network Spotlight. But I like long-term personally. I want lines because I know as collectors it is frustrating for lines to stop and start, And sometimes it gives the perception that a line failed if it goes away and you switch to something else. And like I said earlier, that's not always the case, and it's rarely the case, actually. A lot of it is just freshness driven. But I wanted to create something that can be ownable and live for a long time, and Legends just seemed logical to bring back because they were underrepresented in the line at that point. I know it didn't get a fair shake initially, right? I think it was just getting its legs underneath it when it was canceled initially. Like, it was starting to rock and roll there with like looks people really wanted. So, you know, I thought it was natural. Like, let's bring back Legends. I think this is what people will want the most and what will stick around for the longest amount of time and have the most potential, and really fill like, you know, like a missing gap in people's collections, and bring in even more collectors who may have fallen off the wagon, right? And this, you know, I'm not going to lie, a lot of this was Jeremy's strategy back in the day with what happened with Classic Superstars. Like, he saw an opportunity with Legends, you know, except that for me, like, it was a combination of that and just wanting it back myself as well. So, you know, it did take a lot of work for me to convince people to bring it back, because it didn't end well the first time. But it's back, and it's super important to Target. They do love it very much, and they're supporting it very strongly, and it's doing well for them. So once again, like, I feel like as long as we can keep this momentum going, I'm gonna do my best to keep it around for as long as possible this time, and not have it be a victim of like, we need freshness.
No, I mean, that's awesome. I know you mentioned, you know, the longevity of lines. I also think there's something to be said about the retros, or, you know, the He-Man line. I like when there's a line that lasts maybe a couple of years, 3 years, and then it comes to an end, because you have the whole collection. It's just not ongoing, because sooner or later, you know, usually somebody's going to tap out, a majority is going to start to tap out. I think it's fun to be able to collect the whole line, like the retros. That was awesome, and now you're bringing it back as a specialty. And, you know, depending on how it sells, hopefully, I can't imagine it's not going to sell. You know, we have a whole nother set of retros coming now. I think that's, you know, part of the fun of collecting.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, you don't want to leave unfinished business on the table with these things. You don't want collectors to feel like they were left hanging. So I think that's why like a little bit more longevity is important. You know, it is. I am sad to see WWE Masters go. I do, and I know Bill Beneke, the designer, and Rob, and you know, anyone else who loved that line has some ideas for some leftover figures, but it doesn't feel like oh my god, you know, like we didn't finish something. It feels kind of okay, you know, and maybe we can revisit something and, you know, round things out with some of these characters that we had in mind, and executions that didn't work out for one reason or another. But it doesn't feel like as devastating as when retros ended, right? It feels like, okay, and then Superstars is coming, so everything sort of makes sense, you know. And I know some people are upset, right? They love WWE Masters, but I think it's one of those things, to your point, where it feels like a nice rounded out complete package of a collection. We can go on to something else now.
Yeah, and with Mattel Creations, it feels like there's just endless possibilities of what you could do if you wanted to do another exclusive set. It's in your hands now. If you guys want to put it out, you can do it right through your website, and, you know, hit the targeted market, and without having a Walmart to want to pick it up.
Right.
So, Steve, this was so much fun. I want to thank you for joining us, being part of the sessions today. Just plug your stuff. Tell the people where they can find you.
All right. Yeah, it was a pleasure. This was a great combo. I enjoyed chatting with you. You can find me on mainly Instagram at Action Figure Attack. Twitter, I believe, is Action Fig Attack. Action Figure Attack on the Ringside forums. And then, you know, cheap plug for our crowdfunded Ultimate Edition New Generation Arena, $250 on MattelCreations.com. Backing is basically a pre-order for those new to crowdfunding. Pre-order / back the item after the 22nd. The campaign ends. Whoever backs it will get one if we hit a 5,000 unit minimum. We can make it happen, and then who knows what we can do after that. Different eras, different executions. Sky's the limit. MattelCreations.com.
Exactly. And make sure, if you're interested in the future ones and you're not crazy about this one, back it now, so we got the possibility of the future ones. If you back it now and it's not what you wanted, you'll get your money back if you go to sell it down the line. Trust me. Steve, thank you again so much. It was so much fun.
All right. Thank you so much, Tom.